Well, in all kinds of weather, even with the spray of Lake Michigan, maybe misting into our faces, and the smell of fireplace, let us seek the way of God this morning. In this scripture, Isaiah 40:28 through 31, have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow faint or weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and grow weary, and young men shall fall exhausted, but they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Let us pray. God of strength and unsearchable wisdom, God of the waves, in the waves, of the wind, in the wind, in all kinds of weather and seasons, both of the earth and in our lives. We give thanks for this morning, gathering together with the Spirit grow strong in us this morning. Amen.
Long ago, a young man sits and plays his waiting game. But things are not the same, it seems, as in such tender dreams. And slowly passing sailing ships and Sunday afternoon, like people on the moon I see, are things not meant to be. Where do you go and rainbows end? Why is this song so sad? Dreaming the dreams I dream, my friend. Loving the love I love to love is just a word I've heard when things are being said. Stories my poor head has told me cannot stand the cold. And in between what might have been and what has come to pass, the misbegotten gets a laugh, bits of broken glass. Where do you go and rainbows end? Why is the song so sad? Dreaming the dreams I dream, my friend. Loving the love I love, to love, to love, to love. Oh no, no, no,
Take a moment and say hello to one another. Hey, first breath. Welcome to the 15th season at the beach season. Has anybody here been here for every season? Okay. Anybody here for the very first time? And oh, hi. Yes, hand of applause. What a day to make it your first time. Perfect. It's called the greatest cookie walk on earth. Might be the only one, and it's definitely the coldest one. Going for a good cause. Scholarships to the 27 kids going on the Farm Church work trip in 2 weeks, as well as we're going to make a donation contribution to Farm Church. And a big hand of applause for Bobby down here with both hands trying to pick the guitar in the cold. Next week, I'll be preaching and Terry Moran will be playing the guitar, no doubt in warmer weather. Where's Terry? There he is.
So glad you're here. Thank you. If anyone starts feeling like they maybe have signs of hypothermia, we do have an emergency room physician over here in case there's any of those sort of emergencies we want to cover all our bases. As happens down at the beach, we divide the message into two parts. This is the first. About 10 years ago, I put together what was my absolute dream summer vacation. It was 3 days of sailing on a boat with 3 friends across the lake and then up to the northern part of Michigan. And then 5 days with me and our 3 kids in a cottage in Leland, followed by bringing a whole fresh crew of 3 new guys and to sail back from Leland back here to the Lake Bluff in Waukegan Harbor. And amazingly, it all came together. I thought about it for years, couldn't have been more excited. And when it was 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, time for us to shove off, couldn't have been more psyched, especially because there was a 12 to 15 knot breeze out of the southwest. It really was a great point of a sail for us to start heading that way. And so we were pumped up. We left right at 9 o'clock, smiles on our faces, cautiously enthusiastic. We hoisted the sails, sailed 2 weeks into a totally cloudy night without a hint of stars or moon overhead. It was sailing into this deep darkness with a pretty good breeze behind us. Now, I could emphasize the sort of high seas drama of this experience, and as you'll sense in just a second, it did turn out to be that. But the reality of this trip is it had far more of a Gilligan's Island kind of flair to it. I was the captain, which is fair enough by itself. A good friend with very limited sailing experience had a lot in common with Gilligan, especially in terms of his personality. He was a little bit goofy like that. And then there were 2 other guys who talked their way on board. As it turns out, neither of them had ever been on a sailboat in their life, but they were absolutely positive that it was going to be the greatest thing ever. One of them turned out to be kind of like Ginger, the other more like Mrs. Howell. Suffice it to say, they didn't bring a lot to the table when it came to sailing. So it was both exhilarating as well as nutty as we headed across the lake into the darkness on this 37-foot cutter, rocking and rolling and surfing on the waves behind us, heading towards the right coast of Lake Michigan. Well, a few hours out, as midnight approached, the peaks of the waves grew a little higher. They had time to build. The valleys became a little lower. Our sailing experience got a little lumpier. No one else had the experience to steer the boat, so I was at the helm the entire night. Gilligan just couldn't be trusted. He'd get all anxious and not know what to do. As for Ginger and Marianne, see this green color? That's about the color of their faces. And they spent their time between getting sick down below or getting sick over the rail all over the side of the boat. We made it through the evening, and on the eastern side of the lake, a beautiful pink orange sun just started to erase the darkness of the night. The problem, though, is we couldn't really get excited about that because the seas and the wind were continuing to build. And so to be extra safe, I wanted to charge the battery and all the systems in the boat. And the way to do that was to start the engine. So I stooped down. I trusted Gilligan at the helm for 2 minutes. I stooped down and pushed the button to get the, what's it called, the glow plug. And I counted to 15. And then I pressed the other button to start the engine. And said a little prayer because it didn't always start like it was supposed to. And all of a sudden, there's this the 44 horsepower diesel starts to go and it's charging everything. And I'm like, this is fantastic. And everything was great until about 15 seconds later, when suddenly there was a terrifying smell of an electrical fire that penetrated the cockpit. Very, very bad smell to have on a boat with 3 Gilligan's Island people as your crew members out in the middle of Lake Michigan at 5:30 in the morning. Quickly, I turned off everything. I opened up the hatch to the engine compartment, and out rose plumes of putrid smoke. There was no fire, but the engine was dead as a doornail. The wiring harness for the boat that made everything work electrically, all those wires were fried. We had no power to anything, including the bilge pump, so if we took water on board, all we had was a manual pump to try and get it back out. Nothing except for the sails and a battery-operated radio worked. With the boat nearly disabled, the dream vacation, in less than 12 hours, became a nightmare. The sick Gilligan's Island crew alternated between wanting to be on land and whining for their mamas. There was no engine, there were no gauges, no electrical system. We were still 10 or 12 miles offshore and a long ways from any marina. And while the winds and waves and everything were picking up, making the experience more perilous, if you hang around for a few minutes, I'll tell you what happened and what this has to do with God. So sit tight.
We all have some moments where we question our faith. This is a song about that called Doubting Thomas. What will be left when I've drawn my last breath? Besides the folks I've known and those who know, will I discover some soul-saving love, or just the dirt above and below me? I'm a doubting Thomas. I took a promise, but I do not feel safe. Oh, me of little faith. Sometimes I pray for a slap in the face, and I beg to be spared, 'cause I'm a coward. There's a master of death, I bet he's holding his breath. I show the blind and tell the deaf about his power. I'm a doubting Thomas, can't keep my promises, 'cause I don't know what's safe. Oh, me of little faith. Can I be used to help others find truth, when I'm scared that I'll find proof that it's a lie? Can I be led down the trail dropping breadcrumbs to prove I'm not ready to die? Please give me time to decipher the signs. Please forgive me time that I've wasted. I'm a doubting Thomas. I'll take your promise, though I don't know what's safe. Oh, me of little faith.
Very brief scripture passage from the Gospel of Mark. Just 2 lines. Jesus is addressing his new followers for the very first time. And he says to them, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." So when I left it just a moment or two ago, the sailboat Anamkara was about 10 or 12 miles off the Michigan shore at 5:30 in the morning after experiencing an electrical fire. There's no engine, no power, a huge breeze. The Gilligan's Island crew desperately needed the professor to fix things, but all we had was Gilligan, Mrs. Howell, and Ginger. To make a long story short, we were able to turn the boat into the breeze, 180 degrees, and with about as strong a wind from the north as the boat could endure, we were able to sail about 12 to 14 hours back to Waukegan for repair. We were even able to sail that 18,000-pound boat because of the perfect direction of the wind into the channel and park the boat next to the marina where it could be repaired. Well, on Monday, I went and talked to the folks at the marina to find out what the problem was. Any guesses? The culprit was salt. You see, 12 years earlier, the boat had spent a couple of years on the eastern seaboard in the salty ocean, and just about every square inch of it was coated with salt, that invisible coating. But like rust, as Neil Young sings, rust never sleeps, so it is with salt. And after 15 or so years, a corroded connection gave way, starting this destructive Rube Goldberg chain of events, all because of a coating of salt. Now there's a gentleman by the name of Mark Kurlansky. He wrote an epic 500-page book, if you can imagine, called Salt, A World History. Raise your hand if you read it. Well, he says salt is what makes the world go round. I would beg to differ. Salt is no friend of the sailor. Salt's no friend of the person who has oceanfront property. Salt's not necessarily the best for our bodies. It wreaks havoc on our landscaping. It wreaks havoc in the winter on our cars. Basically, salt seems to be pretty much of a pain. And here we have Jesus 2,000 years ago looking at people and saying, "You're the salt of the earth." What is it that he could be trying to say as he's beginning his ministry in the 3rd decade of his life? Picture Jesus. He's a rabbi, so he sits down on a rock to teach. Whenever a rabbi would teach, they'd always do so seated. So he sits down on a rock as if to tell people who he is. And around him are the curious, and the needy, and the calm, a diverse group, out of whom a dozen would become disciples. In that group is Thomas, who Bobby sang about, naive, a little bit anxious, uncertain. Under the tree a little ways away sat James and John. They usually stayed away from everyone else because they were fishermen. And they had kind of a pungent odor of fish and traveled with him like a cloud. And then there's Judas, the one who would betray Jesus. Keep in mind that these people who followed Jesus and listened to his teachings were absolutely no all-star team of the human race. But Jesus the Nazarene had a charisma that could move mountains. And people were attracted to him, even though he was saying things that were so hard to understand. And what they'd often do after he'd offer a story or a parable, they'd all quick go home, and then they dissect what he said, every word trying to understand what he was trying to communicate. And on this particular day, Jesus, to the curious and the needy and the called, looks at them, and I had this picture in my mind's eye of Jesus for dramatic effect, finding a way to look every one of those people in the eye and then say, "You salt of the earth. Now, what sounds a little crazy to us probably made great sense to the people back then. For starters, in the day of Jesus, salt was so valuable that it was used as an offering in the temple. Now, don't get any ideas. I don't want to see any salt shakers in the hats next week, okay? Salt was also used as currency. So if you have a late fee at the Jerusalem Public Library, you could take in some salt, and that would pay your fee. Salt was used as medicine. Have you ever been in the ocean? Surfing, body surfing, swimming. Somehow the waves tumble you, you get a scratch, and the salt just kills. Back in the days, I remember whenever I'd skin my knees, my mom would quick clean it up, and then she'd pour a bunch of Bactine in it, and it would just sting like crazy. That's how it is with salt. But there's a disinfectant quality to salt that helps with healing. Finally, none of us would ever do this, but in the arid Middle East, people would use salt to help with their landscaping and increase the fertility of the land. And so when Jesus is saying, you are the salt of the earth, what he's really saying is you have great value. Now, that's one way of looking at it. But I love what the commentator William Barclay says. Basically, three brief things about this. Barclay says Jesus was calling people to be pure. You see, Romans believed that salt was the purest thing there was on planet Earth, made perfect by glistening sun and sea. To be the salt of the earth was an example of purity. Now, I don't know about the conversations you have during the course of your lives. I don't spend a lot of time with people talking about purity or how we can be more pure. But the reality is this. I think it's valuable for us to think about it. Because we live in a day, almost inarguably, where values and moral standards kind of seem to be diminishing. Think about the world 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 60 years ago. We've made progress in so many ways, but in other ways, we're going backwards and in a troublesome direction. It's almost like the superficial political correctness is somehow supposed to correct having or replace having real values, and it doesn't work. And so someone who's the salt of the earth is not someone who's perfect, but someone who tries to maintain a high standard. Or as James writes later in the New Testament, is someone who's unstained by the world. So he's calling people to be pure. Second, salt was a preservative. If you have meat or fruit or vegetables, place them in salt, it would preserve them. Finally, and this is my favorite, maybe tune into this. What does salt do for us? One thing that most of us like is it adds flavor to so many different kinds of food. It adds spice to our lives. Maybe salt is to food what faith is supposed to be to our lives. Salt brings out flavor and the essence of many foods. Try having a baked potato without any salt. It's kind of bland. Try having popcorn without a lot of salt. Bland as well. Salt brings fullness to many kinds of food, and maybe so it is with faith. So when Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, you are someone whose faith brings a fullness and a richness to their lives. Now, I recognize that's not how we think about faith. We think about faith in almost the opposite kind of way. That if we believe in God, or if we have faith, or we say yes to the Christian life, They become kind of boring, never have any fun. It doesn't add value. All throughout history, that's what people have said. It's not a current phenomenon. Julian was someone who inherited Constantine Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire, complained about Christianity. He said, and I quote, "Have you looked at these Christians? They're hollow-eyed, pale-cheeked, flat-breasted all. They brood their lives away, unspurred by ambition. The sun shines for them, but they don't see it. The earth offers them its fullness, but they desire it not. All their desire is to renounce and suffer, that they may come and die." End quote. Or I love what Oliver Wendell Holmes said, and particularly appropriate to guys like Zach and myself. Holmes said, and I quote, "I might have entered the ministry if certain clergymen I knew had not acted and looked so much like undertakers." End quote. And finally, Robert Louis Stevenson. I hope you don't enter this in your diary as he did. He wrote, and I quote, "I have been to church today, and surprisingly, I am not depressed." End quote. Jesus said to the curious, to the hurting, and to the cold, and I believe to all of us, he said, "You're the salt of the earth." To be the salt of the earth is to maintain a high standard. It's to do the best we can to not let the values that seem to be overtaking the world and going in the wrong direction, not to overtake us. It's to do the best we can to avoid corrupting influences, but maybe more than anything, to let being followers of the way of Jesus and being partners with the Spirit add a wonderful, empowering quality to our lives. And I, for one, on this funky Sunday morning, hope you'll take that with more than a grain of salt.
Y'all probably remember when you were younger sitting around the piano with the two people, the duet, playing a little Heart and Soul. So this is a song called Heart and Soul. Heart and soul, out of tune on my old piano. Days were soft, nights were slow, fingers popping to the radio, and you were always right beside me. When trouble came, you would hide me. You would always be heart and soul of me. You would write me poetry, simple lines so innocently. Songs would pour from my guitar, simple ones like the moon and the stars, and you were always right beside me. When trouble came, you would guide me. You will always be heart and soul of me. I wonder where you are tonight. I wonder in whose arms tonight. I wonder if you'll think of me in my heart and soul, in the key of C. Oh, you were always right beside me. When trouble came, you would guide me. You will always be, oh, in my mind.
my heart that there's one word that describes the reason that you all are here today, probably two words. Really crazy? No. Great attitude. This kind of an energy, an openness, an attitude, a way of thinking about life that just kind of says, yeah, let's go for it. Who knows what we'll find down there. And even though the word attitude is not mentioned a single time in the New Testament or the Old Testament, the reality is that having a good attitude, a healthy attitude, a kind of go for it attitude, I think is more central to having a healthy faith than most any other thing I can think of. And so hang on to that great attitude, that open mind, that energy, that open heart. Recognize that God is with us in the funky gray days as well as the bright sunshine of our lives. Go in peace, live in the light of God's love this day and every day. And the people said, Amen. Have a good